It didn't freaking matter to Coach Saban. He wanted those guys sprinting to the end of the play. Find someone to block, find someone to put a
Hmm.
hat on, and get that shit done.
And welcome into Touchdown Live. As always, I am Matthew Travis.
Jones certainly has a lot of chemistry here with Hereford. Goes to McGinn. Miller is Smith in the tackle for Alabama.
To the M3 show.
It's not always good for the quarterback on the other side to be talking stuff so early in the game.
Look, I don't have a kid on the way this week, but it's almost time for Alabama football season, baby.
We'll call it a bad time, call it a good time, whatever it might be. This is episode 2 of the M3 show. Alabama loses to Florida State on the road to Tallahassee, their first season opening loss since 2001. We'll get into that. Recap Mac and Josh's time, maybe coming off of a loss, talk about their experience with culture and effort and how that was handled in their years at Alabama, and much more here on episode 2 of the M3 show. But first, I want to get a little temperature check. Josh, we'll start with you. How are you feeling after Saturday? It was a good week for you in another sense, a very good week for you. Obviously, your second child being born, so congratulations on that. But
For,
Alabama soured the mood a little bit on Saturday.
for sure, for sure. So going into Thursday night, I had my son, as you said, 10:37, Jamison McMillan. That
Let's
was that
go.
was, you know, it was a good start to the week. I was hoping that Alabama would follow up with the win, but I mean, ultimately we fell way short. Temperature, I'm running a very very hot fever. I would say like I'm like 104, 105. It's COVID season around here. I mean, as far as a team as a whole, I feel like we were very lackluster. We didn't come out with high energy. I think the offensive game plan starting out was definitely good. We went and marched down the field, had some good positive plays. Like I said, establishing the run early in the game would always be good, but I felt like we kind of evacuated that area when we got towards second quarter, third, and fourth. We relied heavily on Ty Simpson, and I mean he was able to do the best with what he had, but as far as defensively and offensively, I just really don't feel like we hit every standard that we were supposed to, and we can definitely dive more into it. But as far as my grade, I would give the offense and defense in this Crimson team as a whole. It's definitely going to have to be like a D minus.
Yeah, for sure. And you got into it a little bit there. We'll get into it a little more here in a second. But Mac, temperature check for you as well. Vanderbilt won, so good week for you on that side.
Yeah.
But obviously Alabama, rough week for Alabama. Temperature check. How are you feeling after week 1?
Well, if you asked me that this weekend when I was getting a lot of text, it felt like after the game, felt like you were in the like ER room and that's like little beep, beep. People were
Mhm.
giving me pulse checks left and right, and that's kind of what I felt like. I'm a little bit brought back to life just discussing it here. My temperature is hot, is all I'll say. And I'm not going to discuss too much right now. We'll obviously get into it on the show. So when we do, I've got definitely a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Good weekend for me, family wise. My brother proposed on Friday. I am also engaged, so exciting
Let's
weekend for
go.
my family. I think we
Congrats.
found our wedding venue as well, so good weekend there. Soured obviously by Saturday, Alabama losing. Not feeling great. I heard from people I haven't heard from in years who probably couldn't tell you who Tommy Castellanos is, but they're excited that he beat Alabama. And if
Definitely made a name
Alabama
for himself.
Yep. If Alabama wins, it's a Saturday. If Alabama loses, it's a parade. So
Yeah.
that's just how it is. And obviously, a lot of you are probably tuning in to hear the results of the giveaway. We'll get to that here in a minute before we get into our picks for this week, and after we recap the picks from last week, we'll give you the standings for that as well. But Minka Fitzpatrick jersey giveaway, the winner of that will be released later in the show. But Let's get into it. We got into a little bit there. Alabama obviously falls on the road at Tallahassee, 31-17 the final score. Really good start to the game. We were texting in the group chat. We loved the play calling. We loved what we were seeing from Ty early on. Jeremy Bernard was playing well. The rush attack, everything seemed to be going well on that first drive, the scripted plays, and then it fell off a cliff. Florida State responds, and they responded in a big way. Alabama doesn't score again, and doesn't find the end zone again until the fourth quarter. And so, just Josh, overall takeaways, not a whole lot to like from this game. What did
Mhm.
you see that you want to improve? Obviously, going into ULM and Wisconsin, but certainly before we go to Athens and play Georgia in a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of key takeaways from this game. I mean, let's just talk about Ty Simpson because I know everyone is. There's a lot of noise around him. I felt like he had a all right to good performance. I mean, he was 23 from 43 passing. Of those, I think he had 16 pressures. So if you do the math, that's 39 to 43 of the completions that he could have made. So I mean, when we start thinking about it and we're evaluating Ty as a quarterback, I think he did the best with what he the hand he was dealt. I think a lot of the receivers. I mean, Ryan Williams being one of the key guys that went down late in the game. I mean, he missed 3 open passes, like they were right there in his hands, and like he couldn't come down with the catch. Jeremy Bernard showed up really good. He had probably 100 more passing yards, but I really felt
146 was the number to be exact. Yep.
yeah, like stellar performance. Hats off to him. Being one of those guys to be like a outlet for a Ty in a lot of situations. But I really felt like the offensive line, kind of failed him. Caden Proctor, giving up a couple sacks on his end. Him being like one of those guys that are really supposed to hold down the offensive line. Being a year starter coming back. I felt like he's really supposed to command that offensive unit and build those guys up, and he kind of failed us big. Defensively, I think we had more than 14 missed tackles as a unit. There was no presence from any type of inside linebacker. I mean, it was just honestly shocking, being at the University of Alabama, playing inside linebacker, playing outside linebacker, and seeing us give up 237 rushing yards. Like that's an ultimate smack in the face. Like I think our goal as a defensive unit is to not give up more than 100 yards. So for us to give that up, it's just like we're not doing what we're supposed to do, and we're not controlling the game how we're supposed to. And I put 100% blame on those inside linebackers. They're the ones who are supposed to grab control of that defense, and when we're lacking, they're supposed to step up and they're supposed to pick up the falling pieces. So I definitely put 100% attention on them. Like, hey, going into this next week, what are you going to do about this? How are we going to grab a hold of this defensive team? I know we're missing Tim Keening down in the front. We missed Latham late in the fourth quarter. So who are you gonna? It's always a next man up mentality. Who are you gonna encourage and bring onto the bus and make sure that they're doing their responsibility? How are you gonna hold yourself accountable to make sure that all these other guys are gonna follow in line and do their job? I think this is the moment. This is the pivotal moment where we take a stance and we let the SEC and we let the whole world know that, like, hey, look, we didn't come to play last week, but we damn for sure gonna come to play the remainder of this season. So I feel like the defense would take this one in the chin, but I can definitely see them, going over the sheer fundamentals all together. I mean, if it's hands behind the line before each and every play, basically sprint through each and every last rep, stripping the ball out when you're doing good on good. All the key essential pieces to being a pro and a great football player. That's what needs to be shown in these next couple of days.
Yeah, and I think for me, you mentioned missed tackles right there. You obviously went in depth about the inside linebackers. The one that stuck out to me the most was on that 32-yard rushing touchdown. We'll get more into a little more on that play in a second, but missed tackles galore, not a whole lot of really effort being made to stop him, and that's not Alabama football. We heard Mac off the top of the show last week talking, this is Alabama football. That's what
Yeah.
we do, and this is what we do to get ready. It didn't it just doesn't seem like that's what we saw on Saturday. And Mac, for you, just watching the game on Saturday, what were some of the things you noticed that really stuck out for you as well?
Similar. First thing I'll say is, look, it was not a great game. It was not the outcome that we wanted, but let's all not just jump ship. Okay. I see it time and time again. Everyone is wanting to know, is Kalen DeBoer the guy? Is he not the guy? Is this Tide team different? Look, we already know he's not Nick Saban. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, take a seat, relax a little bit. I know it's obviously frustrating. It's frustrating for all of us. We want to see Alabama win. We want to see them be dominant and succeed at a high level. But I think we should just I want to say give it a little bit more time. I still have hope. The optimistic side of me still has hope. Obviously, there's another side of me that could speak on here and go nuts and crazy, but I'm not going to do it right now. I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on. That's the first thing I'll say. But to reiterate a little bit on what Josh had mentioned, Ty Simpson, I remember we were texting as a group that first drive. We thought he looked awesome, and one of the things that really stood out to me, and we talked about it on last week's show, but was his footwork, his speed. He looks very quick. He looks so athletic back there. And yeah, he might have, tried to jump out of the pocket a little bit. What we saw with Jalen Hurts when we played with him, Josh, and that, his freshman year, kind of escaping the pocket a little bit too early, not giving it time to develop. We saw a little bit, I think, of that with Ty, and that's completely. I would want to say that he's developed and has that game experience, but he does not. This is his first time really getting that game, a game under his belt, being the starter, and so you would hope a guy would just naturally have that in him. But let's give him another game. Let's see him develop. He had flashes of some sparks of some incredible stuff that he could do. He was a little bit behind on his passes, but again, this is game one. Obviously, the Alabama standard is very high, but just trying to be optimistic here. And then his response after the game was really mature, and I love the way, because you can see this guy loves the football team. And I'm sticking behind Ty for the sense of, was it the best game? No, but he had a lot of obstacles, like Josh said, multiple pressures throughout the game. The offensive line didn't give him too much. Jam Miller's presence was very missed,
Sure.
and we didn't have. You need to be able to have a balance in the run game, pass game to be able to help that quarterback out, and we didn't really have that. I think we had one. There was a stat that said we only had one carry over 10 yards. When you speak about the standard of Alabama football, that's not it. Let's all be honest. That is not it. That I can't remember the last time that has happened since like Nick Saban was there, and especially during our time, we took so much pride in that run game.
Yeah.
But that's on Ty. Obviously, I kind of went a little bit over Jam being missed. I would have loved to see him in there, and I think you could see his presence definitely missed. Like I said, defense didn't look great. The mentality wasn't there. The physicality wasn't there. And I really had a lot of hope going into the season with those guys. So I was very disappointed to see how it, went down. And then overall, and then speaking to offense, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but Jeremy Bernard, that was awesome. We're talking
Give
about
the
good
kid his
things he can take
flowers.
away. Is he wide receiver one? He might be. He made a big statement there in game one. I would have loved to see, Ryan Williams. I think he's got so much talent. And I think a couple of times I saw him, almost that little bit of fearful or excitedness when trying to catch the ball, seeing like an incoming defender, which I think that obviously some of those passes were not completely on time, or they weren't the best passes, but we always, as a wide receiver room, if you touch the ball, you catch it. That's just how it was. So I'd love to see them
100%.
get better with that and show that in next week's game. And then overall, the biggest takeaway was the mentality. I'm not going to go in on one guy, one player. The mentality and physicality was just missed. It wasn't Alabama football. Josh and I played to the standard in a group that was the standard of Alabama football during the Nick Saban era. Like, guys wanted to kill. We talked about this last week, but there were literally guys that I think wanted to kill the other players. Like that was the mentality. We wanted to, as Kobe came and spoke to us one time, and he said his goal was to line up against someone and make their ass never want to play the sport ever again. That was the mentality that guys had that we played with. Ronnie Harris, Reuben Foster, like these guys went in there and were taking off heads. Mac Wilson, they didn't have any fear. They wanted to go in there with one purpose and one purpose only, so that those guys never wanted to play football ever again. And they did a good job at it. And we did not see that this past weekend. And it was frustrating. But again, the optimist side of me, the optimistic side, and having hope. I hope those things are addressed. I hope they're fixed. Josh, I remember when we were back in the day, Matthew, you kind of went to it a little bit, but like what was it like, when we had a loaf, what we call was a loaf, when a guy, we in practice, we kept a stat sheet on how many loafs the player had. A loaf didn't have to do with a missing assignment. A loaf didn't have to do whether the play was good, whether the play was bad.
Sure
Whatever you
effort.
did, it was your effort. It was strictly your effort. We kept a stat sheet for that. And best believe you did not want to get called out for a loaf. And the things that people got called out for a loaf back in the day were some of them you would be like, okay, is that even a loaf? Like a
Yeah.
lineman trying to keep up with a wide receiver 30 yards downfield and run. It didn't freaking matter to Coach Saban. He wanted those guys sprinting to the end of the play. Find someone to block, find someone to put a hat on, and get that shit done. That's how it was. And that was, to me, it was unacceptable how what we saw on the physicality and that mentality in general on both sides of the ball that almost made my head explode. But again, I'm hoping that we address that over the weekend and we get to see them show up against ULM.
So
Mac, and you go ahead, Josh.
I just from what you said, you said a lot, Mac, and I love everything you said. But a question to you and Matt: are you guys still on the Kalen DeBoer train?
I think it's way too early to tell. We
Okay.
are, what, 14 games into the Kalen DeBoer tenure? If you were expecting Kalen DeBoer to be Nick Saban, that is where the problem lies. Nobody we hired, whether it was Sark, whether it was Dan Lanning, whether it was Kirby Smart, no matter who we hired, they weren't going to be Nick Saban. So Alabama fans and people in general need to get that perception out of their head that Kalen DeBoer is Nick Saban 2.0 because he's not. I mean, you could tell right away by how he decorated his office. People were making fun of that this weekend, saying it looked like a Verizon store rather than Nick Saban's office, which people were just finding anything they could do to pick on Kalen DeBoer. And because he's not Nick Saban, and he told you that in his introductory press conference, I'm not Nick Saban, I'm Kalen DeBoer, and
Yeah.
that's what he did. He's a player's coach. That's part of what was so attractive to Kalen DeBoer was that he is a player's coach, and it worked at Washington, and hopefully it'll work at Alabama. But it takes time. You're not going to go from the Pacific Northwest to Alabama and have success right away. And there were pieces to have success, and last year obviously wasn't what we wanted, but the pieces are still there. This is a 12-team playoff. The sky is not falling. It's not the BCS era where if you lost a game you were out, and it's not the 14 playoff era where you could have one loss but anything beyond that and you're out. This is a 12-team playoff. I mean, Clemson had what, 3 losses going into the playoff last year? They lost to South Carolina and then they won their ACC championship game. This was a non-conference game. At the end of the day, Alabama still controls their destiny. If they go undefeated in conference play, which is going to be very difficult, like we talked about last week, playing LSU, Georgia, and South Carolina, and every other SEC team because it's the SEC, that's going to be difficult. But if they lose one regular season game, they're probably still playing in Atlanta. So you can afford another loss. Hopefully they're not Kalen DeBoer isn't saying we can still lose another one. But the reality is they can probably still afford another one and still be playing in Atlanta. And they can definitely still afford one and still make it into the college football playoff. So that's, for me, what people are talking like the earth is shattering, the sky is falling, Alabama season is over. It's September 1st when we're recording this podcast. It's September 3rd when it comes out. There's still an entire season in front of us. And hopefully when Alabama plays UL Monroe this week, it's not the same team that took the field in Tallahassee this week, but everything is still in front of Alabama. And that's what Alabama fans aren't realizing, because Alabama fans haven't been in this position since 2001. That was the last time Alabama lost a regular season or season opening game. So naturally, there are going to be those overreactions. But I
Yeah.
think we need to temper it down a little bit. And I think beating the hell out of UL Monroe, making up for 2007, will calm those nerves a little bit. Hopefully, you do the same against Wisconsin and you go into Athens with some momentum. But back to your question, Josh, I'm still very here on Kalen DeBoer. That could change in 2 months from now, but right now, we're 14 games into the Kalen DeBoer tenure. For people saying he should get fired because he lost a season opening game at Florida State that was scheduled before he was hired. That's ridiculous, and it's a very good thing that those people are not Greg Byrne and the people who are making the decisions, because that, I mean, not only does what it costs $70 million, but it's like people need to calm down a little bit, give him some time. I mean, what happened to Nick Saban in 2007? It
Yeah.
was a very rough start, and look what Nick Saban built. Stop expecting him to be Nick Saban. Allow him to be Kalen DeBoer. Give him time and see what happens.
I think the hardest thing is we go from, I was trying to think of an analogy in my head. I'm really bad at analogies, but you go from like drinking, tequila to drinking rum. You know what I'm saying? They're two completely different things.
Yeah.
You got to have an acquired taste from one to the other. And it's a shock. And I think Kalen DeBoer definitely has a different system that we're not used to. And I think the thing is, like, the only thing that is hard for me, Matthew, to say, hey, I'm on the Kalen DeBoer train necessarily, is the fact that we see guys come out and play and do the things that they do in the game, in the season opener, after all the preparation that's been done, after all the practicing, after fall camp. That is, to me, an issue. If it's not fixed, it'll be very hard for me to say, hey, I still want Kalen DeBoer to be our coach, or I think he's a great coach. If we're continuing to see guys really not, has nothing to do with the play side on my end, more of like the mentality. That's the biggest thing that I like. People feared Alabama football. And I think that fear is beginning to dwindle. And I'm not expecting him to make us the most fearful team. I know he has a different system. Obviously, he coached in a different conference across the whole entire country, and there are things that he does differently. And I want to see him develop his system. But the thing that I can't take personally is the loafs, is like the guys not making tackles, guys. Like there was a speculative clip, obviously, at the end of the game, and I don't want to go into too much depth of it because I really don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what was happening, but it showed guys maybe joking around a little bit, and it's like, okay, we didn't have that, and it's
Yeah.
hard for people, not only former players but fans who followed, who've drinking this one drink all along, switch over to this new thing, and not want at least some of that stuff that we had prior to be relevant on today's team. That's the biggest thing for me. So I haven't, Josh, I'm kind of indifferent right now. I want to see how
Mhm.
things continue to pan out. I'm not fully in. I'm not fully out. I support, the decision that Greg Byrne obviously made, and the analysis that went into that. But there's a part of me that is getting a little bit like, hey, I can't see that. I cannot see that again, or I might throw my remote at my TV.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your opinion on it as well, Josh.
I mean, I think everything that's surrounding the whole situation is expectation. What we have had for this long, tenure of Coach Saban has been emotion. If a guy had a penalty, and I don't care if it was, unsportsmanlike conduct, it was a hold, it was a pass interference, you saw Coach Saban slamming his headset on the ground. If he wasn't tearing in the ass of the offensive coordinator, he was tearing in the ass of one of those referees. So I feel like the lack of emotion that Kalen DeBoer shows at certain times or instances in the game is what the audience and the fans are concerned about. And I feel like at times it's a valid concern, but at other times it's like, hey, look, that's not his way of coaching. And I get the whole West Coast SEC thing, but I think we're in a different day and age. These guys have the transfer portal. So there are a lot of different outlets for the team members to go out to, and I feel like Dober is trying to really do the best he has to deal with. I mean, you don't want to be labeled as this guy who's just too nice. You would like to be labeled as a player's coach, or a coach that really cares about the program and the standards. But I do feel as if there are times when it's really necessary for you to just tear whoever, whether it's a team member, the quarterback, a team captain, whoever. Get in the ass of some of your assistant coaches, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. 237 yards. You need to be chewing the hell out your goddamn defensive coordinator ass. Like, what are we doing here? So I feel like these are things that we would like to see from a audience perspective. But I 100% respect him as a coach. I feel like he just has a different way and a different style of coaching. He's not that guy that's going to get in your face and tell you and combat you with all these issues. He's more of a constructive guy that, like, hey, look, you didn't do this right. Let's see how we can correct it and be better. So my take is, where we are now is not where we will be later, but it's going to take some of those hard moments and those hard coaching. What they say, it's hard love. I think we need a couple of those moments going forward to where the guys are tending to respect him as a coach, and they're wanting to put their life on their life on the line for him. And and he would then it would transfer onto the field, and it would be a better showing of what the guys want for the team and what the guys want for the program. And you may see some emotion from the coach when he sees his players actually putting their life on the line for him.
Yeah, I mean, how many times did we see Nick Saban ripping someone's ass when you guys were up double digits
Exactly.
with seconds left on the clock late in the game? And I think this stat was one I saw this week that was rather telling about maybe philosophy and going into games and maybe the culture they establish. Since
Yeah.
2007, in games when Alabama was favored by at least 14 points, Nick
Yeah.
Saban was 131-2. Kalen DeBoer in 14 games, in games where they're favored by at least 14 points, so games they're expected to win, he is 4-4.
Mm.
He has lost 4 games now that Alabama was expected to win. Obviously, last year Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Michigan, Oklahoma, and this year Florida State. So
Yeah.
rather telling about maybe preparation or taking your opponent for granted or whatever it might be when you guys are playing, I know that was not the case. So kind of as Mac was alluding, as both of you were alluding to, while I'm still on the Kalen DeBoer train, I might be looking down the road to ways to get off of it, because if that does not change, then it's going to keep going downhill and things will get worse way before they got better, because we saw all weekend online that people were talking about when Alabama came into your town, you were scared of Alabama. Now that, and Mac just alluded to it, that's kind of going away, and it might be gone. I mean, when was Alabama doesn't lose to Vanderbilt? Alabama doesn't lose on the road to Florida State. Alabama doesn't
No.
lose on the road to an Oklahoma team that doesn't know what they're doing at quarterback, and you could just and lose to a Michigan team that isn't playing anybody in a bowl game.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. That's not, as you guys, as we heard so much about under Nick Saban, that's not the Bama standard. That's something that was ingrained in your guys' brain. I know that.
Yeah.
It's just the standard is the standard. And now I don't know what the standard is, because you see plays like on that run play that I talked about earlier, players jogging down the middle of the field when they could make a tackle. And Mac talking about loafs, when you guys are going over that film, you guys are back at the facility after a loss or even after a win, looking over the film, and you saw a loaf. What was the reaction? How would your coaches tear into you to make sure, hey, I'm not doing this again? What are players like the video that's going on. I'm not going to call anyone out by name, but the video that's going around online. What would he be expecting under Nick Saban?
Oh,
Tell them about good, bad, and ugly,
hey,
Matt. Come on. Monday morning, 2 p.m., after workouts, Coach Saban in his chair, everybody, the whole traveling roster, tell them where we at, what we doing, and what we looking at.
good, bad, and the ugly. And let me
Yes,
tell you,
sir.
a play like that would be on the ugly. And you don't want to be on the ugly when Coach Saban is in that room. He's got his little clicker thing and he's pointing up. He lasers. You're looking at a play and he sees that guy and he'll probably look, he'll play it. You'll see it go
Mhm.
through once. And you already know if you're that guy, you were absolutely effed, to
Yeah.
say the least. You're done. He will play it and he'll let the whole group see it. He'll let everybody see it. So you have to live with the embarrassment and also the accountability of everyone else in the room having to see you take a loaf because a lot of guys, there's 11 guys on the football field. Everyone thinks, oh, can get away with one play. It doesn't matter if it was a good, successful play in the sense, like there may be a play where we have a 50-yard pass and it's
Mhm.
called 50 yards down the field. He will make that play. That'll be on the ugly because of a loaf, because of
Yeah.
one guy just taking a little bit of time off, relaxing, doing whatever it may be, not following through with his block, stopping before the ball is thrown, after the ball is thrown, whatever it may be. And you are getting your ass chewed the hell out. He will sit there and he will yell at you it long. He will just sit there and rip into you in front of the whole entire team, the whole
Yeah.
entire coaching staff, in front of everybody, making sure you know you messed up and you never, ever want to do that shit again. That was how it was. Josh, if you want to elaborate any more, but I would be frightened. If I was that guy, I would be scared shitless in Coach
Yeah.
Saban's Alabama team if that was me. That's all I would say.
I mean, just my personal experience. I was on the good and bad and ugly tape. It was Louisville. I can't remember the
It
exact
was
exact year.
2018 to his
2018,
first game.
to his first game. Jalen back there returning the punt. This was his first game. He had a spectacular game. I think he had a kick return for a touchdown. He had a punt return also that was supposed to be for a touchdown. I had a block. It was on the left side of the field. I hooked the guy. I didn't really need to, even touch him because Jalen was going to eventually evade him on the sideline. They throw the flag on me. We get a penalty. The touchdown is brought all the way back. When I tell you, Coach Saban tore me a new asshole, I didn't want to make another mistake for the rest of the year. Like I think I got removed from the punt return team. I got placed back on it. I worked my ass off to get placed back on it, but he took me off of the team. He tore me a new one, and it was just that moment for when you had to be accountable for your responsibility. Like everybody did their job correctly. The play was going in the right direction and you were the piece that made the puzzle incorrect. And I feel like there's not a lot of that. There's not a lot of accountability for some of these guys on the offense and defense. It may take some of those hard moments to be like, hey, look, you fucked up. Like there's no way around it. Like you didn't do your job. So you want to know what? The only way to get better is to have that conversation in front of everybody. It's not behind closed doors. Oh, you give them a little pat on the back, you're okay. Like, no, you need to be a man. You need to approach the situation correctly, and you need to go about it and do better. So I feel like that ultimately that experience right there made me a better player. And I feel like that's what these guys need moving forward. Like, hey, look, there's no pat on the back. Like we're not here to tell you like, hey, look, you're good stuff. We were going to give you all this NIL money. Like you're the best of the best. Like no, you're here to do a job. You're here to compete to a standard. You're here to compete to an expectation. So this is what you guys need to do. And if you don't, we're going to call you out on it.
And it's interesting now, right? Because you guys were playing before the NIL era, before all this new generation of schools can directly now pay players.
Mm-hmm.
So these players are essentially for lack of a better term, professional athletes. So they're going to get ripped a new one. You would hope as a fan watching players like we saw on Saturday not rushing after a 32-yard rushing touchdown,
Yeah.
which could have had a major impact later in the game, lost by 2 touchdowns, so maybe not as much of an impact. But for you guys, going through that, through the Bama standard and taking pride, puffing your chest out when you walked into a road standard, seeing that, Josh, for you, how does that make you feel not seeing maybe that same effort now out of a new team?
I mean, it kind of it makes my blood boil. I mean, seriously, knowing what the guys before me. I mean, Reggie Ragland, Ryan Anderson, Reuben Foster, Jonathan Allen, Tim Williams, Eddie Jackson, Marlon Humphreys. I mean, I can literally go on and on about the guys who set the standard before me, who instill excellence, effort, discipline, toughness, pride, you name it. Like you have a certain expectation that you're supposed to live up to. And when you don't, you get your ass off that football field. Like there is a zero tolerance for not showing effort at all. And they will coach you right on the spot. So me seeing that as one of the older guys, I understand there's a new defensive coach, there's a new defensive staff. Like, hey, so what? During my time there, I went from a defensive coordinator of Kirby Smart, I had Jeremy Pruitt, and I had Pete Golding. And you want to know what? The expectation and the standard did not change, regardless. Like it was always Nick Saban making those calls. And at the end of the day, when the third down efficiency was not where it was supposed to be, when we gave up 100 rushing yards in the midst of a practice, when we let the quarterback scramble for more than 50, 75 yards, we got our ass handed to us, not only by the coaches, but by the players. And I feel like this has to be a players led team in order to be where we want it to be. And I feel like that standard needs to be pushed from those guys. And I will go back to what I said earlier. The linebackers need to grab hold of this team and they need to do their job. And then that will spread throughout the team. You'll have the defensive linemen doing a better job. You'll have the secondary doing a better job. You even have the special teams and the offensive guys doing a better job. It starts with the defense first. It starts within those trenches. And I feel like this is what needs to be done in order for us to get back on the right track.
Yeah, Matthew, like I would say when we talked about DeBoer earlier, the thing is that we didn't bring up really is like, especially, and I think is huge, is the NIL era. We're in a world where these guys are getting paid money regardless of how they play on the field. Does how they play impact the amount of funds they may receive? Yes, it does. And especially too, the way that Alabama is perceived, because those guys, Alabama is in a unique position where their name and image and likeness is higher due to the fact that they're playing at Alabama. If they don't keep that standard high, that NIL is going to go down. That NIL money is going to start to go down a little bit. But the biggest thing is I think that's hard is where we had guys who knew that their spot could be taken at any second, any moment. We had guys that knew when you went into, like Josh said, like he might have gotten taken off punt team or kick return team or whatever it is, but then he had to earn his spot back. And he knew there was other guys, there was 4, 5, 6, 7, however many freaking guys we had that he knew could come up and take his spot at any time. And so I think that's one thing, but then also the pride. And the reason I will stick with Ty Simpson right now again is because I love how much he loves the University of Alabama. People may say, "Oh, that's a silly thing to think a guy cares and you're going to be behind him and stuff like that." No, in an NIL era where there's all this money and then you got these young kids all getting all this money and stuff, for a guy to really want to play for the University of Alabama is awesome. And I don't think you have that across the board. I think you have a lot of guys who love the money, who love all the other stuff that comes with the NIL era, but are not loving just playing for the University of Alabama and having that just feel and love for the tradition and the standard of what the University of Alabama is. So it's very freaking frustrating to see when guys are making loafs or having plays like that where effort is a problem. Again, I'm going to hold my tongue here, but it makes me want to do horrible things when I see it because I'm like, that's not what I'm used to. That's not what anyone else who played for Nick Saban or even in some other areas of Alabama are used to at all. So it's very frustrating. But I would like to say too, it does need to come down to the players. We talked a lot about the coaching, but the players and the community and the guys we had in the building and the way we pushed each other and held each other accountable was to another level. And so those guys need to start taking more accountability as well. And then it's, speaking of, sorry to go on a rant here, but shout out Scott Cochran, won his first head coach,
Yeah,
his
yeah,
first
yeah,
game as head
yeah.
coach. Yeah, 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 yeah. Coach Cock, baby. West Alabama. Hey, that's on a good note. They won his first game as head football coach at the college level. Super freaking pumped for him. But even guys like him, that's who made a huge impact on the team. Coach Saban had the standard, built that standard, and maintained it. But other guys like Scott Cochran had that other impact that really affected the players. Really got us wanting to go in there and have that mentality to kill. I'm not going to say what he said pre-game. Josh, you know what I'm talking about? Ah,
Yeah,
no, I'm not going to say it.
there's
But
some
Coach
explicit
Cochran,
words right there, you know.
Coach Cochran got us fired up pregame and made the players really come around each other and be that unit and hold that standard. So I would love to see these guys really start to take more pride. And again, it's week one. We've seen one game. I'm excited to see the rest of the season, especially this game next weekend, because that will have a lot of answers to the things that we've mentioned or show us a lot of progress. And that's what I'm waiting on before I really get going or get rolling on what I'm thinking or saying. I'm holding my tongue for now. But yeah, it was pretty damn frustrating to see the lack of effort and physicality.
Yeah, no doubt. And for me, as obviously a fan graduating as a non-player at Alabama, it's frustrating for us to see because the standard you guys upheld, the standard that was set when Nick Saban arrived on campus in 2007, it seems to be lacking. And you talked about guys taking pride, wearing that script A on their chest. Guys more recently, like Landon Dickerson, come to mind. Somebody who
Yeah.
transferred into Alabama, tore his ACL, and then
From
still
Florida
came.
State, I think.
Yep, from
Yep.
Florida State. So very, very conflicting game for him. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his wife played soccer at Florida State. So probably a
Wow.
very interesting game in that household. But guys like Landon Dickerson who transferred in and still bought into that culture. He tore his ACL and then was back on the field for the national championship game for granted a victory formation snap, but he was back on the field for that snap. And guys that would give anything to be back on that field,
Yeah.
you wonder if that's the case with this Alabama team now, and if they take that same pride in wearing Alabama on their chest because now they have a couple $1 million coming from this company to be here, a couple $1 million from there, whatever it might be. It brings up the question of, do they take the same pride? And I think for a lot of them, that answer, unfortunately, is no. Guys, I know guys like Ty Simpson do. Ty Simpson had the opportunity. We talked about it last week. He could have transferred wherever he wanted to and probably started 2 years ago, but he stuck out at Alabama because he saw Mac Jones do it. He saw Mac wait his turn and win a national championship at Alabama, and he wanted to do that same thing. And Ty's getting a lot of heat because Alabama lost. I don't think he played all that bad. Josh, you were talking about he was pressured on almost all of his throws because the offensive line maybe wasn't playing up to their standard. And 23 for 43, you're obviously hoping he improves on completion percentage wise, but 254 yards and 2 touchdowns aside from the completion percentage is a
Not too
solid
bad.
game. So if he can hopefully get a little more confidence against ULM. And we talked about it. This was an outlier. You guys, all of your season opening games were usually in Atlanta, or they were one of those kickoff games. He had to go into Florida State, which is an underrated environment. When you're hearing that chop 24/7, that's an underrated environment. It was raining for a lot of the game, and they had to be throwing the entire game because they were down from the get-go. They were down 17-7 at halftime. They gave up 17 unanswered points, all of them because the defense wasn't playing up to their standard. Josh, you burned the inside linebackers, and rightfully so. That's not Ty's fault. Ty played. I definitely wouldn't say great, but I would say Ty played okay. It would be a B minus C plus kind of game,
Mm-hmm.
and for his first career start, in a road environment, Ty at least was not that bad to me. The rush game was horrendous outside of that first drive that we talked about. I forget, I think it was Mac, you mentioned the runs over 10 yards. We had technically two of them. Kevin Riley had one of them, a 13-yard rush, and Ty Simpson had one of them, a 13-yard rush as well. And that was it. We had 29 rushes for 87 yards and no touchdowns. The rush game outside of that first drive when Richard Young and Daniel Hill, Jeremy Bernard, and Kevin Riley had a solid game in my eyes. 5 carries for 31 yards. They were very good on that first drive, but outside of that, and Ryan Grubb talked about it today, they were down. They had to throw. So that's part of the reason that rush attack, those numbers aren't what we hope for. But that's something that definitely needs to be improved because if you thought this was tough, wait for a night game in Athens in September to open up SEC play. If you
For
think
sure.
Doak Campbell is going to be tough, wait for Georgia. That is not going to be any easier. And if you're not improving upon 87 yards on 29 carries, you are going to get murdered in Georgia. So that's something that, in my eyes, definitely needs to be improved upon. And we hinted at Jeremy Bernard. I don't think we gave him enough love because he had a phenomenal game. Obviously, Ryan Williams went out with, I believe, a concussion. Ryan Williams didn't have his best game. He had a couple drops. He wasn't what we saw early on last season. And Jeremy Bernard at the second half of last season kind of became the number one receiver at Alabama because Ryan Williams was struggling. And that's again what we saw on Saturday. So I'm excited to see what Jeremy continues to do. But wrapping up the Florida State game, horrible. It's not what I expected in the slightest. I picked Alabama to win by 24. All of us picked Alabama to cover the spread of 14. And obviously not what we're hoping for. But as we all talked about, the season is still in front of us. Alabama is still Alabama. You recover with ULM. Hopefully, you recover with another non-conference Power Four game at home against Wisconsin, and then you go into Georgia, hopefully with some momentum, and establish that hey, we are still Alabama, and we are still going to make the college football playoff and be a player for the national championship. Hopefully that's what we see. Hopefully the team that we talked about that had preseason All SEC guys around the roster shows up next week and continues to prove why they're still Alabama. So moving on, we asked for some
Well,
fan questions.
hold
Go
on, Matt.
ahead. Go ahead.
Before we
Sorry.
move on, I just want to give credit. It was a key piece that I don't think that I was looking at during my evaluation of this game. Gus Malzahn being on
I
the
didn't
Florida
want to
State
mention his
team.
name.
I trust me, 100%. I understand, and he still haunts me to this day. Well, from when we went down into Auburn, but we definitely have to recognize his how detrimental or how effective he is when he has a mobile quarterback in his offensive scheme.
Yeah.
You
If I'm
saw it with,
ULM, I am hiring him as my head coach right now.
for sure. You saw it with Cam Newton. You saw it with Nick Marshall. Like this guy is so deadly when he has a mobile quarterback. And this kind of applies going forward for the University of Alabama. You will see these plays again. 100%. You saw how effective they were on the reverse run twice. They got more than 25 yards easily. You saw with the wheel route by I guess it was a wide receiver, like came back, motion back in the backfield. Then he ran a wheel route. Like you see these plays, and it puts Alabama on. It puts a red dot on their back. Like, hey, these guys aren't able to understand motion. These guys aren't able to play quarterback runs or reverse screens. It's showing that we're not disciplined defensive players. So I only mention this to I hate to say this, but hats off to Gus Malzahn and what he's been able to do year in and year out with that offensive scheme that he has. And it's so effective. And we've even struggled with it during when we had Nick Saban. So of course it's it's self-explanatory what he was able to do under Kalen DeBoer. And I felt like we weren't able to adjust at all towards it. So guys, just be on the lookout. Next few games, this will come back up again.
Yeah, no
And then,
doubt.
sorry, Matthew, last thing Josh brought
No,
up
go
made
ahead.
me remember. The last thing I'll say about that game is we don't give enough credit to Florida State either. I mean,
Yeah.
they
No.
looked like a pretty damn good football team. The quarterback played a great game. They had about, 12 transfers, I think, starting between offense and defense that they bought in. Different
Mhm.
team than last year. Yeah, they went 2-10 last year. Different team this year with those 8 transfers and other guys. And it's like, we don't give enough credit to them there. They could very well be. We have only seen one matchup that Alabama's had this year. It's Alabama, Florida State. We don't know how good Florida State is, how they're going to be the rest of the season. But from what we saw, they could be a damn good football team. They could compete this year. And I think their quarterback was awesome. He played a great game. So I think that too is something to think about for guys, for people out there, just wondering what the hell happened, like most of us, that Florida State came in and played some pretty damn good football.
Yeah, they're not 2-10 Florida State that we saw last year. They're closer. I'm not saying they are, but they're closer to the 13-0 regular season team we saw 2 years ago than
Yeah.
they are to that 2-10 team last. We were talking last week. We had no idea what Florida State was going to look like because they are an entirely new team. They had to be an
Yeah.
entirely new team because they lost to Memphis at home last year, and they
Yeah.
were 2-10 as a team last year, so they had to. They went out and got Tommy Castellanos, and they rushed 49 times for 230 yards and 4 touchdowns. They were a good team, and like we're going to burn Alabama this week as we did for a good reason, because that's not the Alabama team we expect to see on a football field, excuse me. But Florida State, as you talked about there, was good on Saturday. Was very good on Saturday.
They talked that shit and they backed it up. I'm done. But that's what they did.
Did you guys? Well, I guess that's a good segue. Did you see the shirts they're selling now?
No, I don't want to see them.
It's well, I'll tell you what they say. It says Nick ain't saving them.
Oh wow. Okay.
I don't want to hear about their freaking t-shirts, man.
Let's just
Okay?
transition.
This
I don't want to hear about
this
their
brings me
t-shirts.
into my next question.
Well, the one thing I'll say about that though, them making t-shirts and them storming the field after the freaking game,
Yeah.
great. There is a little bit of that shows us one thing. That's the people still respect us to a certain extent to have to storm the freaking field after a game when they
Yeah.
beat it in a regular season opener. That's
When
one
was
thing
the last
that,
time a team didn't storm the field after
Yeah.
beating
Yeah.
Alabama?
every damn team still storms the field.
Vanderbilt did that last year.
Vanderbilt did it. They had like 20 fans on the
Like
field.
didn't they
I
carry
think I
the
saw Mac waving a
goalpost?
Mac was
Yeah.
like waving a flag or something.
Yeah, Matt, wasn't you on Broad Street, right? Carrying the goalpost, right? Oh,
I wasn't
okay.
even in Nashville at the time of the game.
Okay.
Secondly, it's Broadway, Josh. It's freaking Broadway.
Okay, my bad. Hey, I'm from Memphis. We got Beale Street, so it's to me, it's the second and upcoming Beale Street. But hey, that's just my opinion.
And we have some fan questions that I want to get to in a second, but before we get to those, you guys didn't lose too many regular season games in your time, but coming off a regular season loss, I think the LSU one stands out to me the most because at the time, obviously, unfortunately, sorry to bring up bad memories, but the Iron Bowl did not go our way that year. But at the time, after that loss to LSU, everything was still ahead of you guys. You still had the chance to make the college football playoff. You needed a couple things to go your way because it was 4 teams. But coming off the field after that loss to LSU, what was the message to keep you guys in it and to hopefully say, hey, we can still accomplish all of our goals? We just have to be perfect from here on out. And Josh, I guess I'll start with you. What was kind of the message, and for you guys as players, what were you saying to each other to recover from a loss going into that next game?
I think what Coach Saban really harped on was the fundamentals. I mean, it went back to, the very beginning of camp practice. I mean, we worked on the tackling circuit. We worked on, pursuit drills. We worked on the fundamental plays that basically built our whole entire playbook itself. So I would say the fundamentals. It has to get back to, hey, look, you have an assignment, you go out there, you execute it to the best of your ability. You make sure that you are being the best player and you're showing up. If it's your knee pads, they're covering your knees. Your hip pads, they're on you. Your thigh pads, you got your chin strap. You have the same mouthpiece. You're wearing your shirt is tucked in. You have the right socks on. It's getting back to those very, very small things. And Ty Simpson hit on it a little bit. It's like making sure that the locker room is clean after each and every practice, making sure that the dining hall is spick and span so no one is coming up and cleaning after you. Like you have to be accountable for it, not only yourself, but the others around you. And I feel like that is so important when we're talking about getting deep into this season. These guys got an upset early on in the game. It's kind of, a wake up for what's going to be expected in the SEC play that's coming very, very soon. So this is what they need to do to be able to survive within this SEC schedule. They're going to have to harp on the fundamentals, and I don't think there's no way evading that. Like if the defense, and I'm only going to speak to the defense. And I remember this from going back to camp. If the defense is allowing more than 13 points a game, which we did, if third down efficiency is greater than 50 or 60%, we're not going to win. If the offensive of the opposing team is getting more than 100 yards, we're not going to win. If we have more than 10 lows collectively as a unit, we're not going to win the game. So these are the things that we need to kind of get etched in the back of our mind. Like, hey, look, if we want to be great, if we want to be one of those teams that other SEC teams are thinking about and they're scared of playing against, these are things that we have to make sure we're perfect. And one thing that we really didn't hit on that I feel like we had over 7 penalties for like 80 yards. That is unacceptable. And I feel like there's another stat that's out there that I just kind of read by, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Since Kalen DeBoer has been a head coach, we have never went into a game and left out of that game with less penalties than our opponents. That is a crazy stat. Now, I want y'all to check me on that, but I will say, Coach Saban, if he didn't emphasize anything, there are things that you can control in the game. Penalties are 100% related to discipline. You have to be a disciplined football player if you're going to step on the field for the University of Alabama and play for a championship. And I don't think that we're there yet. We can get there, but I don't think we're there yet.
And before Matt goes real quick, Kalen DeBoer did say today there's a lot of consequences, especially for the foolish penalties. Hopefully that's what you guys saw under Saban, but he did address it, and hopefully we see that it was addressed, because talk is talk, and we saw Florida State back up their talk. We didn't really see Alabama back up their talk of having a great offseason, and all the reports we were seeing about a great week of prep. Hopefully they do address those penalties, because you mentioned it right there. That was one of the worst things we saw. I mean, how many big chunk plays were taken back because of a holding? So, Max, same question for you about recovering from a loss and kind of your mentality as a player, trying to keep everyone in it and focus on your overall goals and everything of that nature.
Yeah, I would say the first thing about it is just the fact of losing wasn't normal to us during that era. So anytime we did lose, people always ask me, like, what's that feeling like? By no means am I saying equivalating, or if that's a word, making it equal to losing like a family member, but in the sense of not knowing what it feels like and feeling like, what the hell just happened? That's what we felt like. Like it was like a Harry Potter. They got those damn Dementor things, suck the freaking soul out of you. That's what it felt like when we lost. We didn't know how to feel. Coach Saban would rip into us, but at the same time, like Josh said, it would be back to the fundamentals. So when we're talking about things like tackling the next week after, yeah, we already focus on every little detail in practice. Everything is a science, but we would overemphasize on tackling. We would do an extra padded practice. We would have to, go back to the basics when it came to tackling, more tackling drills, make sure guys are making tackles. Coach Saban would emphasize it in practice and on film. When it's ball security, we did ball security drills all the time, and especially before practice even got going, we would have the starting drills do that kind of stuff in the first couple of periods of practice. we would be making sure that we would even ramp that up even more. So things that were specific like that we could control. And when Josh talked about penalties, I remember we used to have a thing where we got on the line, they had a football on a stick, and they would sit it down and they would say hit, whatever, go, go. If anyone jumped because it was off the ball, the movement of the ball. So when it comes to offsides, we would sit there and run freaking sprints until we got 20 sprints in a row where we ran at 100% speed until we did not miss one time. Guys jumped off one time, we're restarting the whole entire like run of sprints. So we're going, we could have been on sprint 12. Some guy jumps off sides because they don't watch the ball, and then we're toast and we're back at one. We did stuff like that during mid-season when it was an issue, and we addressed it and we fixed it. So like you said, I'm optimistic that we're going to make these changes, but it was best believe when we lost, it wasn't fun, and those things were going to get fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we move on, any final parting thoughts about Alabama falling 31-17 at Florida
No,
State?
please, God, no. Let's get on. Let's move on from this, please.
Yeah, I would
Freaking
just
lose it.
say I don't think this is the end. I think we will see a different team come ULM. This is not at all the narrative of what I feel like the 2025 Alabama team will be. So I definitely think once Ryan Williams is good, he's back, he's healthy, and he has Todd Simpson and Jeremy Bernard to kind of all come
And Jam
together.
Miller.
Yeah, Jam Miller for sure. He'll be a very key element to this team to be able to produce. I definitely see those guys coming together and setting the standard and the pace for these guys to go off for a national championship run.
Awesome. And we did have some fan submitted questions that I did want to ask you guys. Don't want to spend too much time on it, but one that I know Josh was excited to talk about was the defensive scheme. What do you see out of the defensive scheme? What are you hoping to see improve in the coming weeks?
Defensive scheme. I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's a very interesting scheme. And like I said, I've played for several different defensive coordinators. I think Womack is a very good defensive coordinator. I think he's basically had a upward trend as far as the defensive performance based on the past years. I think it was just simply a lack of execution. You had the defensive lineman not getting off on the ball, not being able to establish the line of scrimmage. You had linebackers not playing on their heels, but very timid and missing tackles. You had loafs on the football field. So I think when you combine all those things together, you didn't really see the defensive scheme that was put in front of you. Like there were a lot of missing components to that. So I think it's the same thing that applies to the defense that applies to the team as a whole. We didn't see Alabama play their best game, and that's just that's just a fact. The defense, the offense, everyone as a whole, they didn't have their best game yet. So I feel like as far as evaluating the defense and saying like, hey, look, we need to get rid of this scheme altogether, I think it was very, beneficial for us last year. We were able to come up with a lot of, turnovers, a lot of big plays because we're showing guys a different, look than the rest of the SEC is playing. So I feel like once we're able to execute, once we're able to, handle our responsibilities and exceed those responsibilities, you'll be able to see a different defense. You'll then be able to change your opinion about what you think about this defense as a whole.
For sure. Any thoughts on that, Mac?
No, I'm trying to keep myself calm over here. Like you just got in a big argument and you are trying to stay even kill. So I'm not gonna go on. I'm not gonna reiterate anything Josh said.
Well, I think another thing is like we have to emphasize turnovers. We didn't get one turnover this last game. These guys ran through each and every hole without balls being punched out, guys being ran over. Like we need to make an emphasis when that ball is on the ground, we're punching it out, and when that ball is in the air, we're attacking it. And I just didn't see that. I didn't see the aggression, in that intensity that Alabama plays to. And that's, no shot at any one person, but evaluating the defensive unit as a whole, it's just I didn't see it. And I think they will also agree when they see the tape, which they just saw past 6 hours. They're gonna be sitting to themselves and saying like, "Hey, I could have did a lot better."
Well, thank you, Crimson Cleo, for that question. And one more question. We'll touch on this one really quickly because we already mentioned it. But Cole wants to hear us talk about the offensive line. How much fault do you put on the rushing game not being what we had hoped it to be on the offensive line versus we're down big, we're trying to come back, and we have to throw the ball in order to do so? I'll
Mac,
start with you on that one, Mac.
yeah.
Wait, so repeat the question a little bit.
So Cole wants to hear us talk about the offensive line. So how much blame would you put on the rushing game or lack thereof on the offensive line, and how much would you put it on we're down big, we have to throw the ball in order to mount this comeback?
I guess it's not in too specific on it. I don't think, overall, I don't think the offensive line did great. It's obviously 11 players on the field at a certain time, even goes out on run plays all the way out to the wide receivers, to the quarterback, to the running back, different guys. Every single little detail matters. But I don't think the offensive line showed up like I wanted them to. That's a long story short. I think they could have done a lot better job. I saw us getting pushed back on multiple plays. And, again, reverting back to what we're used to is that offensive line pushing those guys back, making holes, and our running backs being able to hit those holes with authority and very quickly. And it just wasn't the case. Wasn't the case this past Saturday.
And I definitely agree with you, Mac. The offensive line has always been the anchor of Alabama's offense. And I feel like this was the game where they were supposed to step up even more, not having their starter at Jam Miller, having Richard Young to come in as, not a starter last year. They were supposed to establish themselves and then make it comfortable for Richard to come into play. I don't think that happened. It happened early in the game, but it slacked off throughout the pace of the game. And also, you saw throughout the passing game, we gave up several pressures. There were multiple sacks that were given up on Ty, which kind of made him uncomfortable, a little indecisive. So I feel like overall, offensive line didn't do well. They didn't show up. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have preseason All-Americans on there. You have first team All SEC guys on there. Like, we didn't live up to a standard that was set before us. And I mean, how are you going to respond to that? That's my question to them. Like,
And it was
Yeah.
it was inconsistent,
yeah,
like there was multiple guys that, one play, it's like they're great, and the next, it's like they don't show up. So I think inconsistency, I know Grubb spoke on it a little bit, but that was one thing that I noticed as well. And then like overall, it was a disappointing performance from the offensive line. Because again, like Josh said, they're an anchor. I don't put everything on them, but a lot of it was on them, and the lack of physicality, and the inconsistency across the line for most of the game, whether it be from the pass game to the run game. Just it needs to improve.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping to see more, and we talked about it earlier. It felt like every single time Ty dropped back, he was pressured. He had a quarter second to get it off, or he was going to get sacked, or he had to throw it away, and that was it. And the run game felt the same. That's part of the reason they went to run away from the run game. I've talked a lot about it. Part of the reason was they were down big, just had to throw the ball, hopefully make a comeback, and that's you don't do that by running the clock out. So that's part of it. Overall, we've talked a lot about it. The offensive line just was not what we were hoping to see. Alabama was not what we were hoping to see. So thank you all for the questions. Continue to submit your questions to us on X throughout the season, and we'll do our best to answer them. But don't need to spend too much time on ULM. Obviously, the game that sticks out when talking about Alabama and Louisiana Monroe is 2007 ULM coming in Saban's first season, beating Alabama. We're not the same team we saw in 2007. Alabama might have lost their opener for the first time in 24 years, but we're not the same team we were 18 years ago. I don't expect this one to be all that close. There's a reason it's a 37.5 point spread, and we'll get to that in our picks and our standings, and we'll also get to our giveaway here in a minute. But for me, the thing I want to see is just improvement. I want to see the offensive line be better. I want to see the defense be better. I want to see Ty take a step. He wasn't bad as we talked about, but there are definitely areas he can improve. And I just want to see more consistency across the board for the span of a 60-minute football game than we saw at Florida State. And I think that's really the progression that matters. It's not going to matter if we win 63-7 like we did in 2022. I just want to see Alabama take that next step and be a better team than we saw on Saturday. And that's really across the board. I want to see guys not giving up on plays. I want to see them running, even if it's 63-7 with 30 seconds left on the clock and we're on defense. I want to see them trying to make a tackle and giving their all, whatever they have left, because that's Alabama football. That's what you guys upheld. That's what was established after that 2007 UL Monroe game. And that's what fans in Bryant Denny for a night game season opener, that's what fans are paying to see. And I hope that's what we see on Saturday. So, Josh, starting with you, what are you hoping to see against UL Monroe as we go into Wisconsin?
Well, I'm expecting these guys to come with a chip on their shoulder. Like I'm expecting them to come in with something to prove. They didn't play well, and I want them to come into the game thinking like no matter what, on any given Saturday, if you don't show up to win, you will lose this game. And that's surely what I'm expecting. I'm expecting for Ty to have a fantastic game fundamentally. He did very well, but if he can bring along his offensive line and making sure that his running backs are consistent and they're able to produce, I feel like we will be off to a good start on having this championship run. Defensively, I feel like these guys need to come out on one accord. Defensive linemen talking to the linebackers talking to the secondary, everybody running to the ball, 11 hats on the ball, peppering the ball carrier each and every play. I don't want to see ULM score, period. If it goes back to what the defensive coordinator did last year, when a team got to their goal line, he put the starters back in the game just so they wouldn't score. That's the type of statement that I want this defensive team to make. So I feel like offensive and defensively, both units working together as a whole, that's what I'm expecting to see. Guys defensively to play lights out, maybe have two or three or more turnovers, and offensively a lot of explosive plays. That's what we didn't get last week. We need a lot of explosive plays to make sure that we are trending upward in this battle.
Yeah, I would follow up and say overall, Matthew, to reiterate what you said, and some of the stuff Josh said as well, is just overall improvement. We've heard Ty Simpson speak post game. We've heard DeBoer speak post game. We've heard other players communicate their feelings about the game. It's like, all right, we've heard all of this. We're still hanging on. We ain't jumped ship yet over here on the M3 pod. We are hanging on with the team. We're still hoping. We're still on the train, but I would love to see them come out against a lower level opponent and kick some freaking ass, make their ass quick, and come out with a statement. We're back in Bryant Denny Stadium, the best college football stadium in the whole entire country, the best college football atmosphere, everything. We are going to be back. And I want to see those guys come out there and dominate the offensive line, come out, kick some ass. The run game, let's just get it. Let's, establish the run game. Ty, let's see him get a little bit more comfortable back there, make some explosive plays, and let's see that defense shut that ULM offense down and not allow shit. That's what I want to see across the board. Hoping it happens, still believing, still got hope, still got faith. I would love to see it back at Bryant Denny Stadium.
So you saying Vanderbilt Stadium is...
I had it with you today. All right. I've had it with you. You're done. Let's cut him out. Guys,
I'm done.
He's done. Too tired for this shit, Josh.
Oh, boy.
That's awesome. Well, little drum roll. We're going to announce the winner of our Minkah Fitzpatrick signed jersey. We had a bunch of entries. We appreciate you all joining the giveaway. Hope to do more in the future. The winner is at DC Bama. That is Daniel. Daniel will get in contact with you,
Go
figure out
Daniel.
the logistics of getting you your Minka Fitzpatrick signed jersey. So thank you very much to everyone who joined. Hope to do more of those in the future. Maybe tell us what items you would maybe want to see us reasonably, of course, give away. So thank you all for joining. And now we will get into our picks. First, we'll talk about how each of us did last week. So we had 14 games last week. Two of us went 6-8. One of us went 8-6. Who do you guys think went 8-6?
I
This guy
did.
right here.
I did.
That would
LSU
be
won, baby.
that would be Mac.
Let's
Oh,
go, baby. I knew
no,
it.
Matt-
8-6, folks.
no.
8-6. I know this stuff. You
Is that
follow my
Vanderbilt's
plays.
record this
I'm
year?
going to be making you
Yeah.
monies for days.
Now that would imply they played 14 games, which I don't see happening. But yes, so Mac 8-6, Josh and I trailing a little. Still a lot of room to make up, but
Bye
trailing a
bye.
little bit at 6-8. We're gonna shorten it up this week. Sentence each, give the pick, keep it moving. First one, of course, ULM at Alabama. Alabama, a 37.5 point favorite. And I, for one, am going to hammer Alabama for all the reasons we mentioned. Mac.
Alabama all the way. Need to come out, make a statement game. I'm believing them again. I lost money week 1. Will I win money on them week 2? I hope to God I do. So Alabama, make me proud. Come in. I'm hammering the Tide 37.5.
Uh, I got Alabama. I see them bouncing back. I think the offense will come out on fire. We're definitely going to want to see more explosiveness in the running game. I think the defense will come out on a whole nother different note. We will not disappoint. I got Alabama as the favorite here.
And moving on, some national games. This one does involve an SEC team at the time of this recording. So on the preseason poll, 14 Michigan at 18 Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a 5.5 point favorite. Toss up for me, so I'll go Michigan with the points. Mac?
I'm going to stick with the SEC here. Haven't done me too bad, too wrong. And we're going to go with Oklahoma to cover the spread,
Uh,
-5.5. Give me this.
Josh?
I'm going Michigan here. I like Justin Haynes. I feel like he had a stellar performance yesterday. The quarterback, oh my gosh, he had a great performance for Michigan. I'm going Michigan. I think they'll take it over in the SEC.
Iowa at, again, time of this recording, 22 Iowa State, the battle for Iowa. Iowa State, a 3.5 point favorite at home. Josh, kicking it right back to you for this one.
I got Iowa all day. I feel like they are the underdog. They've been pretty consistent. I have them going for it and beating Iowa State.
Mac?
I'm going with it strictly because shout out to my boy Dominique Daphne at the Panthers right now. Played at Iowa. He's Iowa through and through. And I believe in my guy. He's told me Iowa is covering. So I'm hammering Iowa +3.5. Let's
All
go.
right.
Okay.
I'm going Iowa State. I was impressed with them over in Dublin, beating Kansas State in that one. Big game, big win against South Dakota this past week, too. Iowa State -3.5 for me. Illinois, a 2.5 point favorite at Duke. I grew up a big Duke fan, as it's known. I was there repping Duke shoes and a Julio Jones jersey in Atlanta for that kickoff game in 2019. Was wearing Alabama, to be very clear. I'm going Duke at home. Josh, you didn't like that too much.
No, I'm taking Illinois all the way. I don't see Duke being able to keep up. I mean, no, I'll just leave it at that. Illinois. I don't want to talk about your team.
Mensa, he came from Tulane. He had a big good first game, but we'll see. Mac, what about you?
I'm going to make this short and sweet going with the smart guys over there at Duke.
Oh, wow.
He likes smart guys. Vanderbilt, Duke, he likes them all. But anyway, Baylor at 16, SMU, somewhat of a rivalry game now. Big 12 versus ACC. SMU, a 3 point favorite. Mac, what do you have?
Give me the ponies, baby. SMU. Baylor's coming off a tough loss to Auburn. Hate to do it again. My boy Shaq is out there probably screaming at me when I'm saying this, but
Oh,
go with
wow.
SMU. Had a great run in the playoffs last year, and hammer the Stangs.
Give me SMU. I don't think Baylor was able to put up a good performance against Auburn last game. I mean, SMU has been, that consistent team. Like Max said, they were in the playoffs last year, have a good program going. So I'll take SMU for the win.
Yep, I got SMU as well. Clean sweep there. Our first SEC matchup of the year. Ole Miss at home, or on the road, excuse me. 10.5 point favorite at Kentucky. Kentucky came out super slow versus Toledo. I got Ole Miss with the 10.5 points. Josh, what you got?
I'm taking Ole Miss. Although, Ole Miss lost last year to Kentucky, I feel like, with Lane Kiffin and his offensive, mastermind, he's going to come up and he's going to try to upset these guys. So I feel like he's going to have a little vengeance for this game coming back. I'm taking Ole Miss for the dub.
I'm going to follow along with you guys, and I'm going to rock with the Rebel. Well, not the Rebels, the Land Sharks. The Ole Miss Land Sharks now down. Gonna rock with Ole Miss. Obviously, because of Coach Kiffin, like Josh said, it's just an offensive mastermind. Getting to see what he can do, and know he's going up against that opponent. And they had they blew out Georgia State or Georgia Southern, whoever it was. They played week 1, 63-7. Their quarterback looked decent, had a couple of interceptions, but threw for a ton of passing yards. Looking forward to seeing him against a better opponent. And just don't think Kentucky's going to be able to keep up. Also, shout out to my boy Javon Patterson down there at Ole Miss, along with some others.
Stephon Wynn.
Hey, Steph Wynn too. We got a lot of Bama people over there, so I'm rocking with the Land Sharks.
Oh, Pete Golden.
An underrated rivalry, battle for the border. This one, Kansas at Missouri. Missouri is 6.5 point favorite. I'm gonna go with the underdog. They covered the 6.5 point spread. Kansas for me. Mac, what about you?
This is a tough one. It's really a toss-up for me. And when it's a toss-up for me, I just say SEC. We're going with Missouri to cover the spread.
I'm gonna go with you, Mac. SEC for sure. I don't see Kansas being able to make it out. Missouri for the win.
Moving on, Arizona State, 6.5 point favorite at Mississippi State. I think that spread should be way more than it is. Yeah. I think Arizona State is going to triple that spread. Mississippi State is horrible in my eyes. Josh, what do you think?
I think with Arizona State going into a very hostile environment in Starkville, I think Mississippi State has always had a very, very good history of having a defensive squad. So I'm going to take Mississippi State on this one.
This is another toss-up. And when I said it's a toss-up, I'd go with the SEC. But I'm actually going to rock with the Sun Devils, Arizona State, picking them to cover the spread.
Leaving you alone over there, Josh. And last up, we'll start with Mac because it's his favorite team, Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, a 1.5 point favorite. Mac, what you got?
Look, Diego Pavia, okay, 20 for 25, 275 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. This guy is on freaking fire. You already know who I'm going with here. Anchor down, hammer the doors for all the coin.
I'm trying to figure out how you know all these stats.
Do you think he knows Ty Simpson's line?
No. Come on. What was his completion? Come on, let's talk about it.
Like 25 for 43.
Nope, it was 23 for 43.
Close.
Oh my gosh!
I have
Josh and I knew that because it's our favorite team.
Yeah, that's our favorite team. We actually care. So since Matt gave his, I'm going Virginia Tech. I think they're going to bounce back from the South Carolina loss. Give me Virginia Tech. I hope you guys make Mac pay.
Enter Sandman, also going with the Hokies, one of the most underrated walkouts in college football. I think they played decently against South Carolina, struggled towards the end with some of those picks. So I got the Hokies.
Pretty damn good. I will say Virginia Tech looked pretty damn good. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, Virginia Tech -1.5, but having the anchor down type shit with the doors.
Are the Pavia brothers going to be at that game? Do you know?
What'd you say?
Are the Pavia brothers going to be at that game?
Okay, that's a low blow. Okay, don't be speaking on the Pavia fam. All right,
that's a low blow.
With Pavia. He's the one who's important. He's on the field. He's slinging that thing. Okay, come on, Pavia, make me proud now. Make me proud.
He's not slinging nothing. Watch your words now. Okay, you're doing a little too much right now, Matt.
You're sick. You're sick.
All right. Well,
I
we
understand.
ended the pod on a little happier note than we started on. Alabama looking to bounce back this week at home versus UL Monroe. Hopefully, we are talking about a shutout victory when we regroup a week from now. So that'll do it for episode 2 of the M3 pod. I'm Matthew Travis, joined of course with Mac Hereford and Joshua McMillan. So roll tide, and we will see you all next week.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, baby.